Hi, I'm Christina, and this is New Ways Podcast. Today, my guest is a licensed therapist. Salma, thank you for being here with me today.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to dive into this topic because you so far have been a treat, my friend.
Thank you.
She's got a very interesting perspective on, honestly, mental health and therapies. So what we're going to be talking to you guys about today is hopefully changing your mindset when it comes to therapy and how you view it and the options that are out there for you. So to kind of dive into it, what would you consider traditional therapy nowadays?
I would say traditional therapy has to do with, okay, let me backtrack actually in my own mind. Like I want to go so many places.
Of course.
There's research that supports, and we call it like evidence-based practices, right? Or evidence now, I think like the term is evidence-informed, where people are trying to be a bit more flexible about the approaches that they're taking to therapy. And so there's research that backs up this works. And so traditional therapies are the like acronym therapies like CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, or DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy. And there's obviously like a ton more, but traditional therapies tend to be much more structured. And it's kind of like, you're going to come into the session and I'm going to guide you through what research shows helps you heal. And we've seen over time that one size does not fit all.
Oh, completely.
Right? And so there are elements of traditional therapy and sort of this research-based therapy approaches that work, but then there's a lot that doesn't work for people because they come into the room, and especially for my like very intellectual clients where they're so good at being in their heads, they're so good at sort of taking themselves out of the moment and out of the element. And then they're like, but my life's not better. And so what's going on? I get it. I understand what I'm supposed to be doing. I understand how I'm supposed to be thinking, what I'm supposed to be changing. And yet they're still feeling stuck. And so emerges blending other sort of new aged therapy approaches where we're getting out of the traditional structure of therapy approaches and we're doing things a little bit differently. Long story short. Short story long?
Kind of, yeah. So you're pretty much saying is like traditional therapy is kind of based off of like best evidence-based practice, like things that we've done studies on. But the one thing that I've kind of learned from listening to different podcasts, reading different books, like honestly, it's just out of history is that something that was relevant then oftentimes is proven wrong in the future. Like we are constantly seeing new evidence and new outcomes from different types of therapies, and what worked one way once probably doesn't work now. If we took old methods in any walk of life and tried to implement them now, we are in a completely different time.
Absolutely.
So that's where I'm like, unless we're constantly on like an everyday basis trying new things, we're not going to know what's the actual quote unquote best thing for this moment because it was all done in the past, and what's in the past is in the past.
Well, there's also this push for, and I don't mean to discount doctors and people who have licenses myself as people who have studied these practices and sort of have a space of knowledge to help guide people. But at the end of the day, the most important knowledgeable person in the room is not the therapist. It is the client. It is the person who is walking in with their life experiences and guiding the conversation and guiding their own healing, right? It's not my job to tell you what your healing is supposed to look like. It's my job to be a passenger on that journey because you have invited me in. That you are like, you know what? I think I need a little bit of direction here. So I'm going to be the passenger and say, hey, I think we should turn right here. What do you think?
Yeah.
You know, instead of taking the wheel and directing you, because at the end of the day, when therapy ends or our therapeutic relationship ends, I'm not in your life living your life. So we have to be mindful of listening to the clients and letting them guide what their journey is. And some people are not ready for the things that they think that they're coming into therapy for either. And we have to respect that.
Yeah. You can only meet somebody to as much as they've met themselves. I'm a firm believer in that. Like you can bring a horse to water, you can't force it to drink.
Totally.
I feel like that is where things get really sticky, is when you're trying to force something on somebody that's not ready. In all honesty, from like being in so many different fields when it comes to like mental health, wellness, the medical field, the best practitioners that I do know are the ones that are open and receptive to change.
Absolutely.
The ones that are open to like new ways and modalities, as long as it works and we see the results quotations that we kind of want. Who cares how you get there?
And the results, like the definition of results changes over time.
Oh, completely.
I've had people sort of come in with a particular goal. And like, I mean, I'll start off with sessions like that where I'm getting to know them. I'm getting to know what their goals are so that I have that in the back of my mind. And then I'm making sure that I'm helping them guide that path of like, hey, remember this was like a goal that you talked about. And I feel like we've sort of steered away from that. Do you want to go back to that? Because sometimes we show up in ways that we don't even realize that we're showing up, and new things sort of emerge where like a pattern of thinking shows up. And sometimes we have our own blind spots,
Oh,
you know,
completely,
like we don't necessarily see the things. And then I like to think of myself as a metaphorical mirror for clients. And so I'm getting to know them and then I become a mirror for them. I like to reflect back, you know, whether it's using a bit of like irreverence in terms of like, how I'll say things back to them in the way that they'll say them to me. And then, because there's something really beautiful about sometimes things in our mind makes a lot of sense, but the minute that we put them out into the ether and they're out there.
Oh, for sure.
Like I've
like,
done that,
okay.
you know what I mean? I've done that so many times where I'm just like, I say it out loud. I was like, oh,
you're like, did I really just say that? Did that really just
I'm like,
happen?
wait, that makes no
But in your
sense.
head, you're like, this makes complete sense. I'm completely right or completely wrong. But you say it all and you're like, wow, that was fucking stupid or
Like, I
fucking
see
genius.
it.
Either
Yeah.
way. Yeah.
Yeah.
To me, it's worked in both ways where in my head, I'm like, this sounds and this looks so stupid, but I do it out loud. And the person that I'm sitting with, when I finally said it, was like, that was extremely profound and deep. I do think that we love to live in our heads so much. I'm guilty of it.
It's safe. It's safe to be in our own heads.
I don't think my head is that safe, to be honest with you.
Well,
but
I mean safe in the sense that like no one else can penetrate it, that we have full control of being in our heads.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and I get like sometimes we have like we have different parts in our heads, but I mean safe in terms of familiarity. What's familiar to us is what we tend to stay in.
Okay.
We're much more uncomfortable breaking out of and being in uncertainty. So if we get out of our heads, anybody can come in.
Yeah, as
You know
well
what
as
I mean?
it's safe because of those thoughts that you do have in your head. Like I will say a lot of times when I think of traditional therapy, I'm sitting there talking to somebody and you're sitting there and you're kind of like, I don't know if I should say this because I don't know if it's socially appropriate. I don't know if this is okay. But so in your head, it's safe because you can have that conversation with yourself without being necessarily judged, besides
Totally.
you judging yourself, but at least
Totally.
it's not another person.
Yeah. There's a difference, you know, you're highlighting something that I was just thinking about literally on my drive over here, of like this difference between like being exposed and being seen. And exposure is about a lack of autonomy and choice. And it's sort of like being forced into showing parts of ourselves. Whereas the being seen is we're in control of showing what we want to show. And we give ourselves permission to take that mask off or keep that mask on. And sometimes there's sort of this force to expose ourselves, and that's really unsafe. Whereas being seen is a safer way of showing up, showing ourselves, allowing ourselves to feel and build the trust that we will be taken care of, that we will be loved and cared for no matter what, that I can show these parts of myself and I'm not going to be abandoned in them. Exposure, there's a lot of fear in abandonment, fear in that like, can I say this? I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say this. And there's a lot of risk in that. And there's a lot of fear behind that, right?
See, when I think of being seen though myself, and let alone I've gone on like a roller coaster of different therapies, different modalities and stuff like that. And I can honestly say that I do love who I am. And I do feel like maybe I have a mask on sometimes, but for the most part, now I feel most seen when I am showing up as my true authentic self, when I am speaking my mind. Cause then there are those moments where I'll go home and I'll sit and I'm like, wow, I actually didn't show up how I wanted to. And I don't beat myself up about it to feel bad, but like, it's such a more freeing feeling when you are seen for who you are versus seen from what you want people to see you as.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's two different like energies to it, and it blinds you in certain ways.
I'm really curious to hear your experience of like your journey to get to the comfort of being authentic. And then also, how do you know the difference when you walk away from a situation, you're like, I showed up authentically. And then you walk away and you're like, ugh, that was not me. Like I masked in that. Like how have you learned that difference?
Yeah. And I think this kind of really goes along nicely with the topic that we're talking about too, though, because I feel like it didn't happen just through one thing. All honesty,
Sure.
like my experience with your traditional talk therapy, I'm sitting in a chair talking to a therapist. That was probably the worst experience I've ever seen. And I don't want to turn anybody off from just like that type of quote unquote traditional therapy, because it can be extremely beneficial when you have the right person.
Yes.
For me, it wasn't. So I feel like me finding the right people to talk about things with definitely helped. Places that I do feel like it's a safe space. The practitioners that are open to different modalities of doing things. I've done somatic therapy. I'm not going to lie. I've worked a little bit with plant medicine. And honestly, a lot of my therapeutic experiences happen from group settings, like ceremonies, or like after a yoga class, somebody decided to hold space and we're all talking about our emotions, just letting it flow. Like it made me feel safe being who I am.
Yeah.
Like those were things that were very, very influential in my life. And I do think that also too, I do think certain people are born with a certain level of like self-awareness as well as self-confidence. And I'm not going to lie, I feel like I'm a little bit above when it comes to self-confidence from a young age. Like I always did not like being the person to like shut up, to say the least. Like I always really much wanted to speak my mind. It got toned down as I got older because that's what usually happens. But I do think that was ingrained in my core. And then finally, when I felt safe in an environment where people talk about these things is when I allowed it to come out again. And I gauge how I'm being truly who I am is because it's so funny, because the more you are kind of self-aware is the more you can catch yourself when you're not being yourself, right?
Yeah.
So there were moments where I'm like, wow, I literally just said this to like squash a conflict maybe. And I do think there's a time and a place for everything.
Sure.
Like don't go adding fuel to the flames when you know it's not going to be good for you. But I'm like, wow, I actually just toned myself down there. And I don't think I had to. I think it's just being very, very self-aware and then going back. I'm just like, no, it didn't cause any harm. But I'm like, that's not me and that's not who I want to be. And every single day you get to kind of choose who you want to be.
Yeah.
So it's just like, it's a slowly gradual thing where I catch myself in little moments, and the more I do it, it's less and less. But I think it's just being self-aware, to be honest with you.
Well, and I'm hearing such an important piece that you're talking about too, is that it wasn't just like the self-work that you were doing and allowing yourself and giving yourself permission to do those things and challenging yourself and seeing how that lands. But it was also finding the environments that helped foster that strength in you to continue to show up and do those things. When you had that safety, that led to you taking more risks and learning that those risks are worthwhile, even when the risk doesn't pan out, like somebody harms you or like says something that like shuts you down, but you're strong enough to know like that wasn't a reflection of me, that was a reflection of them, or this environment ended up not being like the safest place for me. So it's really about like that community and that connection that we build that helps.
Definitely. And I'm also a huge advocate for honestly like exposure therapy, as long as it's in, once again, like the safest way possible. But so once again, we live in our head. So many people like to create all these different scenarios about doing something that they never actually do it. They're paralyzed by the fear. But the one thing, I'm a big person on reflecting, big person on exposing myself, because then you realize you're like, wow, this thing that I was so scared of, or like this part of me I was so scared to show, I didn't fucking have to be scared of showing it. I didn't have to be scared of doing it. And that builds your confidence and your like self-esteem enough to move forward and be like, how can I show up more as myself?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. The challenge with that too, though, is how we experience fear in our bodies. And I think it's so interesting that what we say verbally to ourselves changes the experience, obviously, right?
Yeah.
Somatically, anxiety and excitement literally look the same in our bodies.
I've said that before. You're like, your heart starts to race.
Yes,
you start to get like,
if we removed if we removed defining like I'm about to go on a roller coaster and I'm so excited and I'm just like jittery and shaky and I can't stand still and I'm moving around, but I have a smile on my face because I'm excited to ride this roller coaster, versus I'm about to go on a first date and I'm so anxious. No, I can't get out. I can't leave the house. I'm just going to cancel. Your body is literally going through the same thing. And yet our minds make it a completely different experience. And on one hand, we can handle it and we're excited. We get on the roller coaster, we do the thing, and we take the risk. And then on the other hand, we completely fold. Like we have the power in our own minds to change that experience.
Somebody's told me too recently. It was like a podcast about how to conquer jet lag, to be honest with you. But it's so relevant.
That's great.
I know, but I'm like, this thought process is so relevant in life though, is he was literally saying, he's like, tell your mind one thing and the body will follow. You know what I mean? It's
our
just
minds and our bodies are so connected.
So interconnected. That's why whatever realm I'm in, regardless if it is the medical or the mental, I'm just kind of like, if one suffers, the other one completely suffers.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I think over time we have learned, and I think our society teaches us this, to really disconnect our mind and our bodies.
See, I'm hopeful and grateful though that I feel like we are heading in this different direction because I
Oh,
do,
for
yeah,
sure.
yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
do remember being like a little itty bitty, thinking I'm like, wow, mental health was a very. I mean, I don't even consider myself like quote unquote old. I'm definitely getting wiser, but like. This was even what, like maybe in the early 2000s when I was like thinking about my life and what kind of route I want to take my careers. I'm like, mental health is kind of stigmatized and
Oh, yeah.
there's not that much money in it. There's not that much this. It is so crazy. And I'm so blessed to see how it's actually flourished over the past decade, to be honest with you. So
Yeah.
I'm very, very hopeful.
I am too, and there's still a lot of barriers that exist.
Yeah.
And I wanted to go back to two things that you had like brought up earlier in terms of like the safety piece and just finding like the right therapist. I think it's so important that people are taking the autonomy and the time to interview a provider. And it's not just about therapists, but like your doctors, your dermatologist,
Yes.
your gynecologist, your, I don't know, any provider, like we are paying them to be of service to us. And yet we walk into these rooms giving them so much power over us and letting them dictate. And there's not enough teaching us as consumers how to navigate those systems and those spaces so that we are at the center of it. They don't have a job without us.
No, completely.
I don't have a job without clients. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so how are we showing up and advocating for ourselves? And no, I get it. People have the degree and they have like the knowledge, but I am the master of myself. I know myself obviously better than they do. I know my body. I mean, I can't tell you, even in the medical field, how many times I've had clients really struggle with certain medical symptoms and they're going to a doctor, and because that doctor doesn't know or hasn't seen that sort of cluster of symptoms, then they're like, well, just take some Tylenol or give it some time and come back. And like, they're going home and suffering and their quality of life is being impacted. So I think it's really important that we are asking questions as consumers. We are advocating and saying, I'm not feeling safe. And this goes back again to the mind body. If your body isn't feeling safe, listen. Your body is so intuitive and gives you so many important signals that we learn to just ignore. The little butterflies, the flutters of like, oh, I'm just anxious. Oh, it's just a new doctor. There might be something about the waiting room, the receptionist. There might be so many things that help you show up into that office and into that room, being honest and speaking truthfully about what's going on for you, or you shut down and you silence yourself and you let them dictate what your care is.
Yeah. I completely believe in like a sixth sense and like an intuition type of thing. And that doesn't mean also too that there's anything necessarily. I do know some people, I love my people with degrees. I think some of them are fabulous. I do know some therapists without degrees, to be honest with you, that are fabulous. And then I know some with degrees that are not so fabulous.
Sure.
So like, just because you don't vibe in one type of environment or one type of person, that does not mean that you're like going against their practice, that you think they are bad or that you are bad and you can't fit in.
Yeah.
It's anything in life, right? There's people you're going to meet that you clash with, and there's people in your life that you're going to vibe with. And if like you're okay dropping a friend because you don't vibe with them, why are you not okay dropping your therapist or dropping a doctor? There is no shame in looking for like a second opinion if what the person is saying doesn't vibe with you. You're not going to marry the first man you go on a date with.
Right.
Why are you going to marry the first doctor you hang out with and talk to, or therapist?
And that comes to the point of the system and the barriers that we face in the system, right? If you're using your insurance, for example, to find a therapist, and you know, some people's insurances have a limited number of therapy sessions, and so like they're wasting a session, and sometimes people feel so rushed to have to like, I've got to solve these problems, so I'm going to tell you everything right now. And we don't have a system yet that really helps people pace themselves and build safety.
I agree with that.
And it's unfortunate. There are barriers that are beyond. So sometimes like we are forced into pushing against our safety or listening to, and that's what I was saying before, if sometimes like we are in a system that teaches us to disconnect mind and body, that I have to show up to my doctor's appointment with my list of symptoms and tell him that because he has to get to the next appointment and I need to, you know,
it's true though. It's so true. That's it. I see it all the time.
It's hard. It's a hard balance of how do we prioritize taking care of ourselves while also getting our needs met when time is so limited or the system is so fucked up.
It is so fucked up. Like, I know we want to always be, I'm so big on let's be positive. But that's not disregarding that there's so many flaws in the system. It's a broken system. When I'm even in a hospital setting, I'm like, I'm in the business of sick care, not in healthcare.
Yeah.
So I'm curious your perspective then. In order for people to optimize the little time that it appears we do have, what are some questions that you would be asking? What are some checklists in your head that you would keep in mind? One, quote unquote, interviewing a new therapist or a new doctor. Yeah.
So first, I would start with there are certain things like if somebody doesn't offer consultation, they're out. Do you know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
think we sometimes need to be like have standards that protect us. If somebody's not offering consultation where I can ask them questions and get a vibe and get a feel for them, why am I even going to waste my time and waste my session on
Mm-hmm.
talking to them when at the end of it they might not be a good fit? So
Yeah.
one, if they're not even offering the standard of a consultation and you can't email them or have a phone call, a 15-minute phone call with them to ask specific questions, don't consider that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just don't. And then other questions to ask. I think sometimes we are aware of our own the things that get in the way. So I might be somebody who tends to shut down or who doesn't have emotional language. So a question that I might ask is like, I might out myself a little bit and say, you know what, I tend to shut down, and it's really hard sometimes for me to like come back to the moment or like stay engaged. How would you handle that?
Okay.
How do you handle that with like your clients? A general question is like, which I think this is more about, I'm talking specifically about therapy, but this is sort of getting a vibe for the provider. Why are you a therapist? What do you like
Ooh.
about what you're doing, and like what keeps you being a therapist? And not the like, the age old question of like, what do you do for self-care? Like, sure, that might be helpful in terms of hearing how they take care of themselves, but I want to know like, why are you doing this work? Because a lot of
Yeah.
times that shit shows up in the sessions,
Oh, completely. I
you
know so
know?
many therapists who have became therapists, or so many people who have done things in their life because it's been influential in their life.
Totally.
To be honest with you, one of the only reasons I have this podcast is because I'm like, everything that we're talking about right now has been so influential in my life, and I learn and I grow from it every day. So I need it just as much as the person sitting in the chair across from me or the
Mhm.
person listening on the other side. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? So I think that is a very, very powerful question. And I don't want to like, I think you can also, this is where intuition comes in, is like, you can tell when somebody's being authentic on why they
Yes.
love something because you see it in them
Exactly.
versus the
That's
stereotypical response back where you're like, I really just want to help you. You know what
exactly.
I mean?
And that's why I like that question, because it allows for like honest answers, and
Yeah.
you feel the, and I like, I mean, on my website, I have like a little blog, and like I have these questions on there. And so I've had clients like call and like do consultations with me and ask that very question.
Wait, you have these questions on your website?
Yeah.
Okay, I
Yeah.
love
Yeah. So
that.
go to my website,
I'm like, yeah, we'll
check
link
it
it below,
out.
you guys, definitely.
Yeah,
But I love that.
and I like to like I have a resources page because I want to also be a hub. Like I understand that mental health access is difficult, and I'm probably one person that sometimes makes it a little difficult because I'm trying to start my own business,
Yeah.
and so I don't take insurance, and we'll get back to that of just like, the barrier in that. But I do have resources, and I'm always available as a resource, even if I'm not your therapist, like
Yeah.
in whatever way that I can help. But anyways, the asking that question allows for people, the therapist, to answer honestly. And to your point, if they're not
Mhm.
answering honestly, or they're sort of giving you a cookie cutter answer, listen.
If your therapist can't be honest with you, how are you going to be honest with your therapist? Do you want to be
Exactly.
honest with? Yeah.
Exactly. And I've had people be like, "Wow, I really love that answer. Like, I hear the passion in what you're talking about." I'm like, "Yeah, because I love what I'm doing. I love being the person."
Mhm.
As a little self-disclosure, and I say this to like my clients, I'm like, I grew up not having a person, not having the safe spaces. So it's really important for me to be a safe space for people.
Yeah.
I understand firsthand how important that is to have a safe space. And so I've made it my life mission. I've literally made it my career to create safe spaces for people who otherwise don't have that. And
Mm.
when I talk about that, people are like, okay, I feel it. Like this is, and they get excited. They want to do, like, yeah, man, come do therapy.
Yes,
Let's
I
do the
think therapy
work.
is great as long as, once again, you find the right practitioner. It's like, it's been so influential in my life. And on that kind of note too, you guys check out her website because I'm sure there are a bunch of other amazing resources and questions to ask. I'm also curious too, because one thing we briefly spoke about before is there are so many different types of therapy out there. And therapy doesn't have to be this thing that's heavy and hard all the fucking time. Like,
Yeah.
it can be something that's very, very freeing for your mind, body, and spirit. And you can have fun with it. What are some of the most influential therapies that you've experienced?
Yeah. So, another, just I'm gonna put another little plug.
Yeah, please.
Because this goes back to the question thing, and then I'll answer that other question.
Yeah.
Is I think as a consumer and as a client, it is our responsibility to do some research. It's not our job to like go get a therapy degree and then take that into like the therapy
Yeah.
session, but be informed about what modalities are out there. I also have a blog about that. What are different types of modalities so that you can get a better sense. And I remember when I was working with my therapist, And I did a consultation call and I called her, and the way that she described the type of therapy that she did, I literally just started crying over the consultation call because I was like, this is what I need. This is what I feel it. And so when you're asking these questions, you're like, what kind of therapy, like, how do you approach it? What kind of work do you do? What are you like passionate about? Like, how do you therapy people?
Yeah.
The way that they answer that matters.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, the most influential is IFS, internal family systems. And essentially this is really working on like the parts that live inside of us.
Mm-hmm.
And so we are different parts made up of like a whole person, and there are different parts, and this is not like multiple personalities kind of a thing, but you know, the anxious part that shows up when we're like out on a date, or, you know, you know how sometimes people are just like, oh, I'm an introvert, but when I'm with my friends and the people that I know, I'm such an extrovert.
I'm so big on duality, to be honest with you. I'm like so sick of like, let's stop fucking labeling things, saying I'm this, and that. I'm like, I'm absolutely everything.
Yes.
Because around certain people, I'm a completely different person than another person. And I don't think that's me being fake or abandoning who I am. I just think that we are multifaceted. And we have these different realms of emotions for a fucking reason. So embrace them, embrace what comes up and who you are, for sure.
Yeah. So IFS does a lot of that kind of work. And it's more about like the protective parts that show up. So for example, if somebody's had maybe like trauma when they were younger and they've learned to shut down, or they've learned to sort of silence themselves because it wasn't safe to have a voice in their like family unit, for example. And that part when they were younger showed up for survival, but now in their adulthood, maybe that part shows up in their workplace. And so the IFS sort of approach might help break down that barrier and reminding them, hey, you're safe. Like, you're not in the same like trauma or environment that was unsafe for you. And so being able to sort of break out of those. So that I think has been really influential. I think you mentioned this before, just like somatic work. I really love somatic work. Like really just getting back to that connection between mind and body. And then actually, I'm going to talk a little bit about improv therapy.
I was waiting for you to say that, because when you told me this, I've actually never heard of that type of therapy, but it's so right though, that
because
so many things can
I designed it.
Yeah, so many things can be so therapeutic though. Like if somebody's like, that's not therapy, fuck you. It is if it makes me feel better. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so improv therapy is my baby. So I've been doing improv for over a decade. And as I was showing up in these spaces, I found that there was a lot of like, you know, therapeutic value to the work that I was doing in improv. And for me, improv was like performative. It was play. I mean, I'm getting up on stages. I'm doing those things. I do musical improv. And so I enjoy that. However, the lessons that I was walking away with, you know, one of the core tenets, if anybody's familiar with improv, is yes and. Yeah. And we often live life with like yes, but, and we're sort of like negating. And so
I don't even think a lot of people say yes, but
or there's like the no, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, improv therapy, what I developed out of it is it's using improv techniques. It's not about performance, but there is play and there is storytelling and there is movement. All are somatic interventions. And it's in pursuit of emotional flexibility. It's in pursuit of connection, and it's in pursuit of building our confidence. And so it's a group setting. You also talked about like some of the most important spaces for you were about
it
groups.
Allows you to feel safe being seen.
Absolutely.
Because you're not just with one other person who's only there for you. You're with a group of people and they're all there for you, even if you didn't think they were.
We are tribal in nature.
Yeah.
Like we were not, babies are not born and then thrown into the wild and be like, survive, figure it out, right? Like they need community. We need each other to survive. And I'm not saying that like solitude is like bad. Like sometimes we need that time to retreat, but our survival over the course of time is not because we are superior beings. It's because of community. And so building that connection and getting back to that connection. And then I think you had said this earlier of being able to feel safe in those connections, taking risks when we're making connections, right? And so for me, improv therapy is about the storytelling. It's about the connection. It's about the movement, and it's about the play.
Yeah.
I am definitely a therapist who I remember I was working in college mental health, and I remember one of like the receptionists, I was like walking out one day and she was like, I just love seeing the way your clients walk out of like the room with you. She's like, they're always smiling and just like you open the door and there's just big laughter. And I know that your session is over. And I was like, thanks. I love that.
Yeah.
Or like they come in feeling one type of way and then they walk out feeling another way. And it's not because I'm like poking fun at mental health, but I just don't believe that everything needs to be so serious and heavy. Life is funny.
Yeah.
And not that we need to like laugh at it, but we do need to be a bit more like playful and lighthearted, because when we can relax and we can play, we can learn. We need to regulate our nervous system. Our nervous system needs to be calm in order for us to integrate any new information. If I'm sitting here like anxiously talking to you and I'm just like, I'm so closed off physically, mentally, emotionally. I'm not allowing connection to happen. I'm not allowing an openness to happen. But when I can open up emotionally, mentally, physically, there's so much more that we can gain and learn and give. And so improv therapy, come do improv therapy.
No, it sounds absolutely fabulous. And that's what, oddly enough, the second I learned to have so much more fun in my life is the second I feel like my life expanded so much, to be completely honest with you. And this is no hate to any place that you're from, any type of background you have. Like, I grew up in Chicago, and I'm sure a lot of people there have a different experience, but like, my family where I grew up, the town, is like very much about the hustle and grind, and it served its purpose in the beginning part of my life. Like, I love that it instilled those values in me. I think there's a place for everything. But LA taught me how to have fun again. And the second that like I started having fun, I met new people. I started being open to new experiences. And I do think that, like, I'm sorry, you can have your own perspective. My belief is that we're not here to be fucking miserable.
No.
Like,
no, I don't want misery.
And it's to the point now where I laugh while I'm crying. Like, even bad moments I'm kind of excited for. Because in my opinion, I'm like, after this shit show that goes on, imagine what's on the other end.
Totally.
Yeah, so I think, and also too, in improv therapy, you're like talking about being okay with fear and taking risk. Improv therapy allows you to take risks in a fun way. So it's kind of combining the two. And in my mind, I'm like, that's wiring your brain to think that addressing the fear can be fun and safe also.
And it's learning to love failure, right? We're so afraid of failure. We shrink ourselves when we define failure, right? And like what is, and we sort of give up. We're so used to giving up. If I fail at something, if it didn't work out. And you said this before of like, you know, it's all about redirection and protection, right? When things don't work out, it's not the end. It's a new beginning.
I don't also believe in things, quote unquote, like not working out. Cause I'm like, if you can see like, hey, I tried this one thing, it didn't work out exactly how I wanted to, but I've learned something. I don't know one person who's ever done something that they wanted to, and on the other end, that was a complete waste of time. You've learned something. And to me, that's not a waste of time.
Never.
Yeah.
It's never a waste of time. Learning and evolving. And we're sifting through like what I like and what I don't like. And if I have to try a new food and say that I don't like it, well, now I know I don't like it and I won't try it again. But if I never try it, I'll never know.
Yeah.
We don't know what we don't know. So let's go out there and know. Let's know things. Let's go.
Also, too, I'm like, moving to me isn't scary anymore. Because if you do look at the logistics of a lot of things, I'm like, you could always go right fucking back to where you were anyways. Okay, you tried therapy and you didn't like it. You're back to not having a therapist, which is where you were anyways before. Like, you really don't have so much to lose if you realize the loss is actually you just going right back to where you were anyways.
Exactly. Snap back to, and we are so good at snapping back to what we are familiar with. We know it. It's ingrained in our bones. And so, try things.
Definitely.
Give yourself that opportunity.
And the last thing I do want to ask, not to talk about logistics, because this has just been so fun, to be honest with you, but to those people, because I know briefly you mentioned in the beginning that it seems like insurance is kind of against us in these realms of things. What is your best advice to somebody who's like, I don't know if my insurance is going to cover this, or like anything where you're like, when people are trying to figure out a good way to go about getting therapy that's not going to break their bank?
Yeah. So a lot of providers, i.e. myself, do offer something called a sliding scale. So we do our best to try to work within people's budgets as best as we can. Insurances do, and here's the thing, sometimes we have to be our biggest advocates. So if you're finding a therapist who offers something that's not within the network that they offer, there are things called a single case agreement. There are out of network benefits. And if you advocate for yourself and you're making a case for yourself and you can prove that, like, for example, I specialize in eating disorders. I'm also a person of color, and there's not a lot of therapists in, if you look at your insurance website and you're like, okay, I need to find a therapist and here are some of the criteria. I want somebody who has maybe the same faith background or can relate to my identity and also specializes in this thing. When you start to put those filters, you might not actually find somebody within an appropriate radius that fits the mold that you're looking for. And that's where you can then sort of make a case for yourself with your insurance, and that's what a single case agreement is, where it's just like, you as an insurance company are not offering the service that I'm looking for. And so let's make a deal. And so
I didn't even know that was possible.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what and I think like sometimes insurances make it difficult. Like for example, I'm working with a client right now where I'm trying to work on getting a single case agreement, and just the automated system is so frustrating.
Oh, where you can't even talk to a human. You just have to keep pressing buttons and you're like, I'm going to throw my phone against the wall right now.
And so now imagine that you're like struggling and you're looking for support, and then you have to do this logistical stuff. So I get it. I get that it's difficult. And that's where maybe we start to learn to like ask for help, or somebody else who isn't, maybe I'm not the one that's like feeling like really depressed or anxious and I need that help. So I might ask a friend to help make this phone call for me so that I can get the care that I need. So there are things like in terms of working around insurance, there are things in terms of sliding scale fee. And then at the end of the day, like I'm going to say it, like, is there a price on your well-being?
I say you always pay for it in one way or another, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Whether you're suffering and miserable, years of misery, or you invest in it. And there are providers out there who are within your budget. And I get it. It is tough to navigate the system and to ask the questions. But this also goes back to what we were saying before. Ask those questions up front. Have standards, right? Like don't just settle for somebody because like, you know, you're on, I don't want to say certain company names, but like this is just what they're offering and they just assign you a therapist. So, and that's what you can afford. So therefore you're just going to do it. Then find a different system. I know it's hard. It's very necessary.
I completely agree. It's necessary. And something I kind of want to add to is I feel blessed. I mean, we're in LA right now. We both have a good roof over our heads, and it seems like we're both doing fairly well. So I feel grateful for that every single day. And I see it as like an opportunity I don't want to waste. Yeah. That's why I'm not scared to drop the money on this, because I believe the best investment you can ever make is in yourself. Yeah. But on that note, I do want to acknowledge that there are people out there that are probably very, very struggling even for a meal at points. Yeah. So on that note too, my best advice for that at least would be like, as you mentioned before, take your mental health and your life very seriously. Like it is in your hands. But as long as you take it serious, you can find what we were kind of going back to before, therapy in so many other ways that are probably a little bit cheaper than sitting down with a trained professional. Yep. Confine in the people that you know have done a lot of work. Confine in the environments that you know are going to allow you to flourish and feel safe. And a lot of times too, when you do calm your nervous system, like through, I'm a big advocate, I know this is so woo-woo, but like yoga, breath work,
that's like woo-woo, girl.
Those types of communities.
Yes, 100%.
From where I'm from, it's considered kind of woo-woo. But yeah, no,
I'll put a plug in for Dance Church. If anybody's ever heard of Dance Church.
No, I haven't.
Love it. And it is all about that somatic experience of really connecting to your body. And one of the rules that they say at the beginning is like, there's no talking. We are here to feel and be embodied and be together. And it's such a beautiful community of just, you fucking go and you dance around and you just move your body. And there's no like rules for the movement that you're doing. You just move. And I can't tell you how many times I've been so stuck because I'm trying to make my processing so verbal. And I was like, I'm going to go dance. And I go and I move my body, and how I feel after
so much.
Even
before this podcast, we were shaking. You heard me let out a big scream. I'm like, I have to scream before every single podcast. I don't know why. I just have to do.
And I know I keep like elongating this, but that's also goes back to like the point of this whole conversation is that therapy is not just sitting in front of a therapist, right? No. Like let's break out of that you can also do a lot of like healing and work. And of course it doesn't end there. There might be like value in talking to somebody and processing through things, but there are also a lot of free resources.
Yeah, as well as like books and articles. You were saying like your website, there are so many different things. If you go out, you have faith and you allow yourself to be like experience these types of things, and you have faith that they are out there. You just have to go looking for them. Absolutely. To be honest with you.
And I promise you, if somebody emailed me or like reached out and they were like, I can't afford therapy, but I need help with like a book recommendation or this or that, like I will respond.
Oh, me too. 110%.
So I think there are a lot of us out there who want to help and who want to be, because for me, it's also important to like, I know that like I am a private pay practitioner. And so I try to offset that. Like I also need to make a living. I live in LA, you know, but I try to offset that by being available as best as I can in other spaces that I'm not charging for.
Definitely. I mean, my healing journey, healing in quotations, because I don't think I was ever broken, to be honest with you, but we don't got to get into that. My journey started literally just by me picking up a book, and then it was on a roller coaster. Like it started independently and it's turned into like this beautiful thing of a combination of modalities and communities.
Amazing.
So to kind of close out then, my last question would be to anybody regarding therapy, what is your best advice?
Try it.
Okay. I mean, like so fucking simple, and I'm obsessed.
Try it.
Most people, that's what I mean though, is I'm so guilty of wanting to be like, let me come up with some profound answer about this is what you have to do. Try it. So fucking simple.
Just try. Yeah. Like, don't knock it till you try it. Like, I don't know how, I don't want to add more to that. I mean, I think
you don't have to.
I think what I would add to that is trust yourself, trust your intuition. We have gone so far away from trusting ourselves and we ignore the signals that our body gives us. And so trust yourself and try it.
Yes.
Trust yourself and try it.
Yes. Selma, thank you so much for being here with me today. This was so much fun, and you are just so insightful and a breath of fresh air, to be honest with you.
Thank you. This is great.
So thank you so much. And to my listeners, thank you so much for listening. Until next time, I love you.